We defended the Earth when it was abandoned, and it returned to its executioners. The sun was setting over the ruined landscape of Earth, casting long shadows across the broken cities. What once was a thriving world now lay in ruin, abandoned by the very people who had once called it home. The alien invasion had come without warning, overwhelming Earth's defenses in a matter of days. It wasn't just a battle for territory, it was a war for survival. The world's governments had made a choice. In a desperate attempt to preserve their most valuable citizens, they evacuated the planet. The elites, the military, the scientists, all of them were whisked away to distant colonies on other worlds. But the ordinary people, the ones who had no power or influence, were left behind. They were forgotten, left to fend for themselves in a world that had been abandoned to its fate. No one had ever expected the resistance to form, let alone stand a chance. But humanity had a stubborn streak, one that refused to be silenced, even in the face of extinction. In the heart of what was once New York City, a small group of survivors had gathered. They were a motley crew, some soldiers, some engineers, some civilians, but all had one thing in common: they were survivors. They had lived through the initial attacks, through the destruction of their homes, and through the chaos that followed the Great Exodus. Now they were the last line of defense for a planet that had been abandoned by everyone else. Commander Sarah Ward, once a respected officer in the United Earth Forces, now led this ragtag group of resistance fighters. She had seen her world burn before her eyes. Her friends, her comrades, gone in an instant, but she wasn't going to let Earth die without a fight. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to come back," Sarah said, standing before a group of her most trusted fighters. The dim light of the room flickered overhead as the hum of broken machinery buzzed in the background. "We need to take the fight to them. If we don't act now, it'll be over." One of her officers, Lieutenant David Graves, spoke up. "And what if we fail, Sarah? What if they come back stronger like they did the first time?" "We don't have the luxury of waiting, David," Sarah snapped. "This is our home, and we're not going to let it fall without a fight. We may be outnumbered, but we still have the advantage of knowing this planet better than they do." Sarah's words carried weight, and the room fell silent as the others mulled them over. The truth was, they were all scared. No one had any illusions about the odds. The aliens that had invaded Earth were not some random group of invaders. They were a force unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Their technology was far beyond anything humanity had developed, and their army was vast and ruthless. They had destroyed Earth's military in the blink of an eye, leaving the survivors with nothing but scraps of old technology and sheer willpower. But it was that willpower that had kept them alive. The resistance wasn't just a group of soldiers, it was a community, a family. They were determined to fight for the world they had once known, no matter what it took. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of the fighters who had come to rely on her leadership. Each one had their own story, their own reason for being there. Some had lost families. Others had lost friends, and some were just trying to find a purpose in a world that no longer made sense. One of the younger fighters, a former tech specialist named Emma, spoke up. "We've been scavenging old tech for weeks now. We found some weapons, some old AI that could help us track their movements, but none of it will be enough to take them on head-to-head. We need a plan, something they won't expect." Sarah nodded, her mind already working on the next step. She had seen the alien forces at work, and she knew that if they were going to win, they would need to outsmart them. They couldn't hope to match the invaders' strength, but they could use their intelligence, their creativity. Humanity had always thrived by adapting and innovating. If they were going to survive, that was the edge they needed. "We won't win by facing them directly," Sarah said. "But if we can hit them where it hurts, we might be able to force them to retreat. I've seen how they operate. They rely on a central command. If we can get to that, if we can disrupt their leadership, we might just turn the tide." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about infiltrating their base? That's a suicide mission." "We don't have much of a choice, do we?" Sarah said with a grim smile. "But we won't go in blind. We've been tracking their movements. We know where their forces are concentrated. If we hit them in the right spot, we might be able to take out their supply lines, their communication networks. It's a long shot, but it's our best shot." The others began to nod, the fire of determination lighting in their eyes. They had seen what the aliens were capable of. They had witnessed the horrors that had unfolded when the invaders had first arrived. But now they had something to fight for, something worth protecting. As night fell over the ruined city, the resistance made their preparations. They would move under the cover of darkness, using old underground tunnels to sneak past alien patrols. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all they had. Sarah stood at the edge of the makeshift camp, gazing out at the horizon. The stars above were dimmed by the smog and smoke that still hung in the sky. Earth was a dying world, but as long as she and her team were alive, it wouldn't go down without a fight. "Tomorrow we strike," Sarah said, her voice resolute. "And we'll remind them, Earth is not theirs to take." With that, the survivors went to work, gathering what little they had left to prepare for the mission ahead. As they moved through the darkened streets, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The battle for Earth was far from over, but she would not let her people be abandoned again. The days that followed the first skirmish were filled with tension. The small resistance group had gathered in a hidden underground facility, nestled beneath the shattered remains of an old city. This place was once a bustling center of commerce, a symbol of Earth's past prosperity. Now it was little more than a shadow of its former self, its grand structures reduced to rubble. But in this forgotten corner of the world, the resistance found a place to regroup, to plan, and to prepare for what was coming next. Sarah Ward stood at the front of the room, looking over a map of the ruined city and the surrounding areas. The map was old, outdated, but it was all they had. She ran her finger along the lines of the map, tracing the paths the alien forces had taken and the locations of their major installations. "This is it," she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. "The heart of their operation. If we can hit them here, we might be able to cripple their entire operation." Emma, the tech specialist, walked up beside her, her face tense with concern. "You're not thinking of going directly into their main stronghold, are you? That's suicide. They'll have hundreds of soldiers there, and we don't even know how many of their higher-ups are stationed there." Sarah turned to face her, her eyes steely with determination. "I'm not saying it'll be easy. But if we wait any longer, we'll be giving them the time they need to wipe us out. The alien forces are organizing. They're preparing for something big, something we might not be able to stop if we don't act soon." The others in the room gathered around, listening intently. The tension was palpable, but no one voiced their doubts. They knew Sarah was right. The aliens were not going to wait forever. They would return, and when they did, they would bring everything they had. "We've been scavenging for weeks now," Emma continued, her voice quieter now. "We've found old weapons, old technology, but even with the AI we've been able to access, we're still underprepared. We'll need more than just a few weapons and old data. We'll need something they can't predict." Sarah nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but that didn't mean they couldn't win. It meant they had to be smarter, more strategic. They couldn't fight the aliens head-on. They had to find their weakness, something they didn't expect. "We have the advantage of surprise," Sarah said, her voice firm. "The aliens might be stronger, but they underestimate us. They think we're just survivors, desperate and scattered, but we're more than that. We've got the knowledge, the willpower, and the drive to take them down. We just need to find a way to make them pay." Emma looked at the map again, tracing her finger along a set of underground tunnels that led deep into the heart of the city. "There's a hidden network of tunnels beneath the alien stronghold. They're old, barely used. We could use them to get close without being detected, but they'll have patrols in place. If we can't disable their security, we'll be walking into a trap." Sarah's eyes narrowed as she studied the map. "We'll need to take out their security systems first, and we need to do it quietly. No alarms. If they catch wind of us, it'll be over before we even get started." The group began to make plans. They divided into smaller teams, each tasked with a different objective. Some would focus on hacking into the aliens' communication networks, while others would work on infiltrating the security systems. The rest of them would work on securing weapons and supplies for the mission ahead. It was risky, but it was their best chance. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly. Emma and her team hacked into old satellites, using them to gain access to the aliens' communications. Meanwhile, Sarah's team scouted the area, moving through the ruins to identify key entry points and potential hazards. The tension was mounting, but so was their resolve. Every person in the resistance knew that the mission ahead was their best, and possibly only, chance to take back Earth. One evening, as the group gathered around a makeshift table to discuss the progress of their mission, David Graves approached Sarah with a grim expression on his face. "I found something," he said, holding up a small data chip. "I was going through some old records from the UEF archives. This doesn't make sense. It's a transmission from the alien fleet. It's dated right before the invasion started." Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she took the chip from David. She had a feeling she knew what it was. The question that had been nagging her since the beginning: why did the aliens invade Earth in the first place? She inserted the chip into a nearby terminal, and the screen flickered to life. A distorted image appeared, but it was enough for Sarah to see what was being said. The transmission was in a language she didn't understand, but the voice was unmistakable. It was the voice of a high-ranking alien commander speaking to someone, or something, off-screen. "We've been monitoring the humans for years," the voice said. "They've become too dangerous. Their progress is accelerating. If we don't act now, they'll surpass us. We cannot allow that to happen." Sarah's stomach churned as she listened to the words. The aliens hadn't invaded Earth because they wanted to conquer it. They had invaded because they were afraid of humanity's potential. Earth was not just another world in the galaxy. It was a world full of potential, a world that could become a threat to the aliens if it were left to develop unchecked. "We need to destroy them before they have the chance to rise," the voice continued. "Their technology is primitive, but they adapt quickly. Their resistance is not to be underestimated. This will be the final strike." Sarah sat back, stunned. The truth was more horrifying than she could have imagined. The aliens didn't just see humanity as a nuisance, they saw them as a threat, and that made them even more dangerous. If the aliens were willing to destroy Earth just to prevent humans from advancing, then they would stop at nothing to finish the job. "Are you sure about this?" Emma asked quietly, her eyes wide with disbelief. Sarah nodded slowly, her mind racing. "It's worse than we thought. They're not just invaders, they're executioners. They didn't come to conquer us, they came to stop us." The room fell silent, the weight of the discovery settling over them all. The aliens had not only invaded Earth, they had set a plan in motion to ensure humanity's extinction. And now, with the truth revealed, there was no turning back. They were not just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for their future. The next morning, the resistance began their assault. The mission was dangerous, more dangerous than anything they had attempted before. But they couldn't back down now. Earth was counting on them. They moved swiftly through the ruins, taking out alien patrols and sabotaging their equipment along the way. Sarah led her team into the underground tunnels, following the map Emma had provided. Every step felt like a risk, but there was no turning back. The air was thick with tension, and every shadow seemed to conceal a threat. As they approached the heart of the alien stronghold, Sarah's heart raced. They were so close now. The aliens were within reach, and their fate, Earth's fate, was in their hands. It would be the fight of their lives, but Sarah was determined to win it. With each step, she reminded herself of why they were fighting. For Earth, for the future of humanity, and most of all, for the chance to show the invaders that humanity could not be silenced. The air was thick with anticipation as the resistance moved closer to their target. The tunnels beneath the alien stronghold were narrow, dark, and filled with the smell of damp earth. Each step echoed in the silence, a reminder of how fragile their mission was. Sarah Ward led the way, her eyes scanning the shadows, every instinct alert. The team moved like ghosts, their movements quick but quiet, avoiding detection at all costs. They had come too far to fail now. The plan was simple: infiltrate the alien stronghold, sabotage their communications, and escape before the enemy had a chance to retaliate. It was risky, but they had no other choice. If they could disrupt the aliens' ability to coordinate, it would give the resistance the upper hand. But the closer they got to the heart of the stronghold, the more Sarah realized that the aliens had been prepared for them. "Stay low," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "We're almost there." The group nodded in unison, their faces grim but determined. Emma, the tech specialist, led the way with a small device in her hand, scanning for any signs of alien security systems. She had been working tirelessly for weeks, studying the alien technology, finding ways to disable their surveillance, and learning how to counter their advanced systems. But even Emma knew that one wrong move could spell disaster. They reached the entrance to the alien command center without incident. The large steel doors loomed before them, an imposing barrier that separated them from the heart of the enemy's operations. Emma pulled out a small device, connecting it to a hidden port in the wall next to the door. It was a simple hacking tool, but it had already saved their lives more than once. "Give me a second," Emma murmured, her fingers flying over the small keyboard on her wrist-mounted device. Sarah held her breath, her hand on the grip of her rifle, ready for anything. The silence felt suffocating, but she knew that time was against them. They had to act quickly. A soft beep sounded from Emma's device. "Got it," she said. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a dark, sterile corridor beyond. The team moved quickly, slipping inside and closing the door behind them. They had made it into the heart of the alien stronghold, but the real battle was just beginning. The interior of the command center was a maze of high-tech equipment and alien interfaces. Rows of glowing screens and holographic displays filled the room, casting an eerie light over everything. Sarah's team spread out, quickly setting to work. Some of them began planting explosives to disable the alien power supply, while others worked on sabotaging the communications equipment. As Sarah made her way to the central control room, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air felt too still, the quiet too complete. They hadn't encountered any patrols, no alien soldiers in sight. It was as if the entire facility was deserted. She couldn't shake the nagging thought that they were being watched. "Everything's going according to plan," David Graves said, his voice crackling through the comms. "We're making progress, but we've got to move fast." "I know," Sarah replied. "Stay sharp, something doesn't feel right." She reached the central control room, the heart of the alien operation. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a large, circular chamber. At the center of the room stood a massive alien console, pulsating with strange, shifting symbols. The walls were lined with screens displaying data that Sarah couldn't begin to understand. It was an alien language, a system of communication far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. But Sarah didn't need to understand it. She needed to destroy it. "Emma, can you hack into their mainframe?" Sarah asked, her voice tense. Emma, who had been busy planting charges, paused and looked up. "I can try. It's not going to be easy, though. The alien encryption is unlike anything we've seen before." "We don't have time for easy," Sarah said. "Do it!" Emma approached the console, her fingers moving with practiced speed as she connected her device to the alien system. The screens flickered, and for a moment nothing happened. Then a low, resonating hum filled the room. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "We're not alone," Emma said, her voice tight with tension. "They're coming." The first alien soldier appeared on the screens in front of them, moving quickly down the hall toward the control room. More followed, their presence now obvious. The resistance had been detected. "Get out of there now," Sarah ordered. "Move, move, move." Emma's fingers flew over the controls, trying to finish the hack before the aliens arrived. But the soldiers were already closing in, their footsteps echoing through the halls. "Done," Emma said, her voice strained. "Their systems are down, they won't be able to communicate or coordinate, but we've got company." Sarah cursed under her breath. The mission had been a success, but it had come at a cost. The aliens would retaliate, and they would do so with everything they had. The resistance was about to be overwhelmed. "We need to go," Sarah said, turning toward the exit. "Now!" The team moved quickly, retracing their steps through the maze of hallways and tunnels. But it was too late. The aliens were everywhere, flooding the corridors with their advanced weaponry and heavily armored soldiers. The resistance fighters fought back, but they were outgunned, and the aliens were relentless. David led the charge, his rifle blasting at the alien soldiers who had blocked their path. "We're not getting out this way," he shouted. "We need another exit." Sarah's mind raced. There had to be another way. They had planned for this, but the aliens had anticipated their every move. They had to think fast, or they wouldn't make it out alive. "Follow me," Sarah shouted. She led the group toward a maintenance hatch they had discovered earlier. If they could reach it, they might just make it out of the stronghold alive. But the closer they got, the more alien soldiers they encountered. The resistance was being pushed back, cornered. The aliens were closing in from all sides. "We're not going to make it," Emma cried out as an explosion rocked the walls around them. Sarah grabbed Emma's arm and pulled her toward the hatch. "We will make it, just keep moving." They reached the maintenance hatch, but as Sarah tried to open it, an alien soldier appeared from around the corner, its weapon aimed directly at her. Without thinking, Sarah fired first, hitting the alien in the chest. It fell to the ground, but more were coming. "Go," she shouted, shoving Emma toward the hatch. "I'll hold them off." David hesitated for a moment but then nodded. "We're not leaving you behind." "I said go," Sarah ordered, her voice hard. Emma didn't argue. She and the others crawled into the hatch, disappearing into the dark tunnel beyond. Sarah turned back to face the advancing alien soldiers, her heart pounding in her chest. The mission had been a success. They had crippled the alien communications, bought Earth some time. But it had come at a cost, and now she was alone. She fired again, hitting another alien soldier. But there were too many of them, and she knew she couldn't hold them off forever. She had done what she could, but the true battle was just beginning. As the walls closed in around her, she knew that Earth's fate was no longer in her hands. It was in the hands of the Resistance, and they had to finish what she had started. Sarah's heart raced as she crouched behind the wreckage, watching the alien soldiers sweep through the corridors. The low hum of their weapons filled the air, sending shivers down her spine. She could hear them speaking in their strange, garbled language, but it was their heavy boots on the floor that worried her most. They were getting closer. She had lost track of time. It could have been minutes, or it could have been hours since her team had escaped through the maintenance hatch. All she knew was that she was alone now, and the chances of making it out alive were growing slimmer by the second. But Sarah had never been the type to give up. She had led the Resistance for a reason, and that reason was to protect Earth, no matter the cost. The tunnel she was hiding in was narrow, dark, and silent, save for the distant sounds of the aliens hunting her. She had to move. She had to find a way back to her team. Her mind raced with possibilities. They had completed the mission. The communications were down. The aliens could no longer coordinate their forces. That was a victory, but Sarah knew it wasn't enough. The aliens would retaliate. They were ruthless, and they would make sure that every last human was wiped out. If Sarah didn't find a way to rejoin her team, Earth's chances of survival would be slim to none. She pulled herself to her feet, wincing as pain shot through her leg. She had been grazed by one of the alien weapons during their retreat, but the wound wasn't fatal. It wasn't the pain that made her hesitate, it was the thought of what she had left behind. Her team was out there, and she couldn't let them fight alone. Taking a deep breath, she adjusted the rifle in her hands and moved forward, staying low to the ground. Every step was calculated. The sound of the alien soldiers grew louder, but they still hadn't spotted her. Sarah knew she had to be quick. She needed to find her team and get out of the alien stronghold before it was too late. The tunnel twisted and turned, taking her deeper into the underground facility. Sarah had memorized the layout before the mission, but in the chaos of the retreat, everything had blurred together. The silence of the tunnels was unsettling, broken only by the sound of her own footsteps. The deeper she went, the more isolated she felt, but there was no turning back. She had a mission to complete. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the tunnel, followed by a burst of harsh light. Sarah dropped to the ground instinctively, her hand reaching for the ground as she tried to stay hidden. She could hear the alien soldiers moving quickly in the distance, their voices rising in alarm. They had found something. Panic gripped Sarah for a moment, but she shook it off. She had to stay focused. The tunnel ahead was blocked by a large pile of debris, but beyond it she could see faint light flickering. She had to get to that light. It was her only chance. Carefully, she crawled toward the pile of debris, making sure to avoid any noise. The flickering light grew brighter as she got closer, and soon she could make out the faint outlines of a door. It was a maintenance hatch, just like the one she had used to escape earlier. But this one was in better condition. It was an exit, or at least a way to get closer to the surface. Sarah pushed herself to her feet and reached for the handle, but just as her fingers touched it, a voice echoed through the tunnel. "She's here," one of the alien soldiers shouted. "Find her!" Her blood ran cold. They were closing in on her, and the door was still locked. With no time to waste, Sarah quickly retrieved a small explosive charge from her pack and planted it on the door. She had no idea how much time she had left, but she knew it wasn't much. The countdown on the device blinked, and Sarah took a step back. The soldiers were getting closer. She had to be quick. The explosion blasted the door open, sending a shockwave through the tunnel. Dust and debris flew everywhere, but Sarah didn't hesitate. She sprinted through the doorway, her feet pounding against the metal floor as she moved toward the surface. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't care. All that mattered was getting out. She had to find her team. The surface was still a war zone. The alien stronghold was surrounded by scattered remnants of the Resistance, soldiers fighting to hold back the invaders as best as they could. But the aliens were relentless. The humans were losing ground. Sarah reached the top of a hill and paused, her breath coming in heavy gasps. The scene before her was chaotic. She could see the glow of alien weapons in the distance, and the screams of the injured rang out in the air. Her team, her family, was out there somewhere, fighting to protect what was left of their home. She scanned the battlefield, her eyes locking on a small group of resistance fighters in the distance. She recognized them immediately. It was Emma, David, and a few others from her team. They were pinned down behind a large piece of wreckage, fighting desperately against the alien soldiers. Without thinking, Sarah rushed toward them, her rifle raised and ready. The aliens hadn't spotted her yet, but she knew it was only a matter of time. She couldn't waste a second. When she reached the group, she found David crouching behind the wreckage, his face smeared with dirt and blood. His eyes widened when he saw her, and for a brief moment there was relief in his gaze. "Sarah," David shouted, "we thought—" "Save it," Sarah said, cutting him off. "We're not out of this yet." She motioned for Emma to move closer. "How are we looking on ammunition?" "Do we have anything left?" Emma nodded, her face pale but determined. "We've got a few grenades, some small arms, but the aliens have reinforcements coming in. They'll break through soon if we don't do something." "Then we need to stop them before they do," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We'll hold them off. We fight together. We've come this far, and we're not going to let them take this from us." David raised an eyebrow. "What's the plan?" Sarah looked over the battlefield, her mind racing. The aliens were closing in, but she knew they could still win this. If they could disrupt the alien forces just one more time, if they could destroy their command center for good, they could turn the tide. "Emma, you're with me?" Sarah said. "We're going for the control tower. David, you lead the others in holding the line here. We don't have much time." Emma and Sarah moved swiftly, taking cover behind the wreckage as they made their way toward the alien command center. The air was thick with smoke, and the ground trembled under the force of distant explosions. They had to get to the control tower. If they could disable it, the aliens wouldn't be able to coordinate their forces. The humans would have a chance. The closer they got, the more alien soldiers they encountered. Sarah fired first, taking down one of the invaders before slipping behind cover. Emma followed her lead, taking out another soldier with a precise shot. They were making progress, but the aliens were everywhere. There was no room for mistakes. As they neared the control tower, Sarah felt a rush of adrenaline. The mission was simple: destroy the heart of the alien operation. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that Earth's future depended on this moment. If they failed, everything they had fought for would be in vain. "Ready?" Sarah asked, glancing at Emma. Emma nodded. "Always." Together, they charged toward the control tower, prepared to face whatever came next. The aliens were not going to win this time. The battlefield was chaos. Alien soldiers moved through the wreckage with purpose, their weapons flashing with deadly precision. The resistance fighters, though few, were determined, their eyes hard with resolve. They had come a long way from being scattered survivors to this last, desperate stand. Now, they had one final chance to turn the tide in the war for Earth. Sarah and Emma sprinted across the open ground, keeping low to avoid the alien patrols. The control tower loomed ahead, towering and menacing. Every step felt like it was taking them closer to their final confrontation with the invaders. "Stay close," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant sounds of gunfire and explosions. She glanced around them, her eyes scanning for any sign of movement. The closer they got to the control tower, the more she felt the weight of the mission settle on her shoulders. It was the only shot they had left. They reached the base of the control tower, taking cover behind a large, mangled piece of alien debris. From this vantage point, they could see the alien soldiers patrolling the tower's perimeter. The air around them hummed with tension. Sarah's heart was pounding in her chest, and the gravity of the moment weighed on her like never before. "How are we looking on explosives?" Sarah asked Emma, her voice steady despite the mounting pressure. Emma, always the cool-headed technician, looked at the small device in her hands. "I've got enough to take down the main power grid, but if they have a backup, it could delay the explosion. We'll have to move fast." "Then we make sure they don't have a backup," Sarah said, determination in her eyes. "Once we destroy this tower, we can disrupt their control for good. This is our chance to break them." Without wasting another moment, Emma activated the small charge, setting it on a spot directly below the tower's core. The countdown began. "We've got a minute," Emma said quickly. "Let's go." The two of them moved swiftly, navigating the wreckage with practiced ease. The alien soldiers were now fully aware of their presence. A few shots rang out, narrowly missing as Sarah and Emma ducked behind another piece of cover. "We're running out of time," Sarah muttered, frustration building in her chest. They couldn't afford to be delayed. "Just a little longer," Emma replied, adjusting the device to its final settings. "We need to disrupt their network just as the charge goes off. We'll buy the resistance the time they need to take the upper hand." Sarah nodded. The plan was risky, but it was their only shot. They couldn't fail now. The ground beneath them trembled as the first of the charges went off, shaking the earth and sending a wave of panic through the alien ranks. The control tower's lights flickered, and the high-pitched hum of the alien technology began to slow. "Perfect," Sarah said, watching as the alien soldiers scrambled to react. Their communication lines were cut, and their coordinated movements faltered for a moment. "Now!" Emma shouted. With that, Sarah and Emma launched themselves toward the main entrance of the tower. The alien forces were disoriented, but they quickly recovered. A group of soldiers appeared around the corner, weapons aimed directly at them. Sarah fired first, taking down one of the soldiers with a clean shot. Emma followed suit, firing her own weapon with practiced precision. The sound of alien weapons charging filled the air as the resistance fighters pushed forward, each shot a reminder of how much they had sacrificed to get this far. "Keep moving," Sarah shouted, her voice drowned out by the cacophony of gunfire. They reached the tower's central hub, a massive control room filled with alien interfaces and glowing panels. The walls hummed with power as Sarah and Emma stormed into the room, guns raised and ready for whatever the aliens had left to throw at them. "One more push," Sarah said, her voice low but resolute. "Once we take this out, they're done." Emma nodded, quickly assessing the room. "The central processor is over there," she pointed to a large, cylindrical structure at the center of the room. "I'll get to work on the override. You cover me." Without hesitation, Sarah took up position near the door, her weapon trained on the entrance. She could feel the heat of the battle growing closer, the sound of alien footsteps reverberating through the hallways. She knew it was only a matter of time before the aliens made their final assault. She couldn't afford to let them reach Emma. "Almost done," Emma called out, her voice tense as she worked on the override terminal. Her fingers flew across the keys, hacking into the alien system. Just as the door to the control room started to open, Sarah heard a loud, booming sound. The tower's power grid was faltering, and the entire structure seemed to groan under the strain. "Move!" Sarah shouted, rushing to Emma's side. She fired a shot at the doorway just as the first of the alien soldiers stepped inside. With a sharp hiss, the aliens retreated, realizing their assault was futile for the moment. They couldn't reach the core. Emma was getting closer to finishing the override, but the alien forces were relentless. They wouldn't give up until they had either killed Sarah and Emma or recaptured the tower. Emma worked faster now, her face strained with effort. "Got it!" she shouted. The control tower erupted in a series of violent flashes of light, the alien technology sputtering and failing as the systems crashed. The sound of alien weapons powering down echoed in the room as Sarah took a deep breath. They had done it. The battle outside was far from over, but the aliens had lost their command center. Without communication, their troops would be disorganized, vulnerable. The resistance now had the upper hand. "Let's get out of here," Sarah said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. They turned to leave the control room, but just as they reached the doorway, an explosion ripped through the wall beside them. The blast sent both of them flying backward, crashing to the floor with a painful thud. For a moment, everything was a blur of dust and debris. Sarah struggled to her feet, her ears ringing from the explosion. She could hear Emma groaning beside her, trying to push herself up. "Emma," Sarah shouted, reaching out to help her friend. "I'm okay," Emma coughed, her face smeared with dirt. "We need to go now." They ran, dodging more explosions and gunfire as they made their way toward the exit. The alien forces had begun to regroup, but it was too late. The damage had been done. Earth had a fighting chance. The resistance fighters had already begun their counteroffensive outside, using the disruption to their advantage. David and the others were pushing forward, rallying the survivors, fighting with everything they had. They were no longer outmatched. The aliens might have been stronger, but humanity was far more dangerous. As Sarah and Emma reached the surface, They saw the first signs of victory. The alien fleet, once so sure of their dominance, was now scattered, their forces in disarray. The resistance had struck back, and they had struck hard. Sarah turned to Emma, a grim smile crossing her face. "We did it," she said. "Earth-S not going down without a fight." Emma nodded, though her face was tired and streaked with dirt. "But the fight's not over yet." Sarah watched as the sky above them darkened with smoke from the alien ships falling from orbit. The battle was still raging, but they had made it. They had forced the invaders to retreat. They had shown the universe that humanity would never be easy to defeat. "We fight," Sarah said, her voice low but filled with resolve, "until it's over." And they would keep fighting. They had to, because Earth was their home, and no one was taking it from them.